Well, you know who I. Well, hell, let's just move on to the next story because it goes hand in hand with the whole gas price conversation. Hybrid Cars every month pulls together their hybrid car sales numbers, and this month, February. Surprise, surprise! I bet it was the last week and a half of February. Hybrid car sales are outpacing normal traditional ICE cars as far as sales go, percentage-wise. And I don't think that is a shock to anyone who's listening to this podcast. But one thing I will say just about the fuel prices is that, just 2 weeks ago we had on the gentleman from the Chrysler dealership, the Dodge dealership. And boy, Chrysler, Jeep, Dodge, they are in a bad position when it comes to rising fuel prices. They are not protected within their model lineup from something like this.
Yeah, I'm afraid they're doomed unless they've got an ace up their sleeve that nobody's caught wind of yet, or they're not letting on about.
They're banking that people will always need big trucks, and a certain group of people will always need them. Now, whether they'll be able to afford them or not, their story. But yeah, I mean, when your fuel-efficient vehicle is the Avenger, you're screwed.
Well, what's going to happen with it is that, there are people that need big trucks. And in the future, going forward, the only people who are going to be purchasing big trucks are those who really need it. All these wankers that think they need it, that they actually don't, they're going to get rid of those things. Or it's just gonna bury them. So.
Yeah.
I've seen so many articles the last few days, and they're all like, hybrids see renewed interest amongst high gas prices. In other news, people still breathe. It's like the stupidest title to articles I've ever heard in my life, because it's the most obvious thing, right? Or am I just crazy?
It's sort of like when you read an article about some sort of a scientific discovery. They always seem to exaggerate, and the headline writers do a weird job. It's always like scientists are baffled or something. Yeah. They have to make it an interesting headline, and I guess by wording it the way you just said there, Danny, it makes it interesting right from the get-go, right? Because the average Joe might be like, oh yeah, maybe I didn't know, but I guess the hybrids were in trouble, and now it looks like they're back. I think I'll read this.
Yeah, it's like car buyers this past week more interested in hybrids than last week.
Yeah.
No shit, Sherlock. Thank you very much for your reporting.
Yeah. Well, I've always listened. The news makes you more stupid. Okay. That's
what. Who was it that I'm going to quote Christopher Hitchens here, or paraphrase? He said that he became a journalist so that he would actually be able to, to find out what was going on in the world. He wouldn't have to rely on the media to report. There's something to that, maybe.
I think it was the free drinks, actually.
Well, sorry. Let's look at some of these numbers real quick, because they are fairly compelling numbers. I mean, I don't really like looking at. We've talked about this before, but I don't really like looking at comparing it to last year.
Yeah, year over year is.
It doesn't make any sense. I mean, looking at the Highlander, the Highlander sales were up 108% compared to February of last year. There can be so many factors, But let's look at the biggest movers and shakers. The Prius was up 27% compared to last month. The Fusion, which really surprised me, was up 42.3% compared to last month. So good numbers for that. The CRZ is up 22%, which I gotta hand it to Honda. They actually have some good numbers here with the inside in the CRZ. A total of about 2,800 units they're moving this past February.
That was me not saying something.
Go ahead and say it, Russell.
Dramatic pause. What was I thinking? Okay, so, I mean, honestly, look at it. And I'm not cheerleading for Toyota at all here, but Holy shit, 13,000 Priuses, and second place has 1,700 cars.
See, I wasn't even going to say it. That's just mean.
No, but I mean, what? That's why I get a little like irritated though when we start talking about like, oh, you know, second place or it's going to be big. They're not even in the same like order of magnitude here.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, you add up the rest of them, clean diesel, electric cars, all of them combined, and they probably don't add up to the number of Prius sales.
No, the Prius outsells everything else on this list combined.
Well,
Now
it's probably because it kind of works for the most number of people, and it's really probably just about the best overall car from this list. Would you agree?
I you know what? I would agree, and that's being sort of, you know, partisan because I own the Prius and I've loved it for a long time. But what blows me away is that, like, obviously there's a lot of people out there who could buy a Honda Insight pretty cheap or could buy a CRZ, and last month 3,000 people did. And last month 13,000 people bought a Prius. That's wild to me that they're that far behind.
Well, my Toyota dealer here in town has about 70 Priuses on the lot. My Honda dealer has 4 Insights and 2 CRZs.
Oh, Linda, don't get me started on this again.
I'm just saying.
Don't get me
if
started.
If I needed to buy a car this week, I wouldn't be able to buy an Insight or a CRZ because they wouldn't have the combination of features and color that I want from that limited quantity. I could walk into Toyota and I'm sure find exactly the combination of package and color that I desire because the production numbers are so much higher.
Is that Barcelona red Prius looking pretty good to you these days, Linda?
No.
Oh.
I'm not driving a boat down the road.
Wow. The Prius
It's just
is
big.
A boat
The
now.
Prius is big. The Prius is big.
I agree, but I think it's because Linda and I both spend a considerable amount of time behind the wheel of a first-gen Insight, though.
Right.
The Insight
Yeah.
2 is what? Almost the same size as the Prius?
It's pretty darn close, I believe.
And it's a little cheaper than the Prius?
Mm-hmm.
Well, one's a small car, one's a medium car, according to the National Highway Transportation Safety Administration.
I still don't get the disparity. And look at let's take Honda out of it. Maybe Honda for some bizarre reason only wants to ship 3,000 hybrid cars in the U.S. every month, and they're never going to sell more than that because that's all they're shipping.
Right.
Ford certainly doesn't have that issue, and they sold 1,300 Fusions, and the Fusion's a nice car.
But an expensive car.
Right.
It's a little pricier, but it's
What, $28,000?
Hey, look at what sold only 100 fewer than the CRZ. The Lexus RX 450h. You could buy like 3 CRZs for the cost of one of those. The numbers on the numbers on the RX hybrid are very impressive to me. I mean, I know that is kind of
Which one is that one? Is that the big SUV? Is that or the little one?
The little SUV, the little Lexus.
Okay, yeah.
And I mean, I know that's kind of the non-traditional, traditional hybrid buyer. You know, the people with money who want to feel good about the environment but still want an SUV.
Mm-hmm. Well, that's been a very, very popular the RX 450. You know, without the H, that's been a very, very popular model for Lexus. So, I mean, it's not so crazy to me and it's been an established model for a while. It's not so surprising to me that it's sort of nipping at the heels of a fairly new model that's a 2-seater, you know, from Honda. I find that, you know, it seems like in this country at least people will buy, you know, 1,000 SUVs before one person buys one 2-seater car. Of course, there's not many 2-seater cars anyway.
Okay, just to give you an idea, the Fusion sold a total of 23,111 units last month. So 1,400 of those were hybrids. I'm assuming that 23,111 includes the 1,400 hybrids. And let me find out what the Lexus numbers are here, because I think it's important. Russell,
I was going to follow up to what you were saying earlier about you don't get why why the Prius, is almost an order of magnitude more sales than the number 2. I mean, I don't think it's very difficult to understand. It's a great car, and it meets the needs of most people, I think, that are looking for a car. And they've had excellent, market penetration, and, it's not... It's a name that's been around for over 10 years. I guess it's worked well for them in the bottom line. And I say this, being a person that owns Hondas, the Prius is a great automobile. Do you think there's something else more than that to it, or?
No, I don't. I honestly don't know. I mean, if I was a cartoon character, big question marks would be shooting in my head right now because I just don't know. It would make more sense to me if number 2 maybe sold even 5,000 or 6,000. Versus the Prius selling 13,000. The idea that number 1 sells 13,000 and number 2 sells 1,700 boggles my mind.
Yeah.
That number 2 is that unpopular or that poorly distributed or whatever it is. Let me ask the question the other way. Look at the Toyota Camry hybrid. 993 last month. That's almost as much as the CRZ.
That surprises me. I think I've seen almost all of those 993 running around my hometown because all I ever see are Camry hybrids on the roads out here. Seriously.
And that's a car that, somewhat like the CRZ, has been kind of universally panned for a number of reasons. It's not cheap. The trunk is full of batteries. And it's a Camry for better or worse. Either you like that kind of vanilla style or you don't. But, so here again, the Camry hybrid is close behind the Insight, the Fusion, the CRZ, and this Lexus RX450h. It's right in there with them.
Well, what's very interesting about the Lexus RX, and I just looked up the sales numbers. RX total sales for last month, 6,557.
Wow.
So almost a seventh of the RX sales were hybrids. That is a really high hybrid percentage, wouldn't you say?
I think so.
Yeah, definitely.
Compare it to 15%?
Yeah, I mean, what did you say the Fusion sold last month? 23,000?
23,000, yeah.
Yeah, 1,300 of them were hybrids, That's
significant.
Yeah.
Yeah, okay.
That's all I got on that.
Well, it's nice to see a list here in February 2011 that has, 20-odd cars on it. Just think 5 years ago, we'd have had 9, and think 10 years ago, we'd have had 2.
Oh, yeah. Great point. It's a win everywhere, right? I mean, just the fact that there's all these options.
Yeah, very much so. It's a win for the car buyers.
Yeah.
And obviously the upper-end car buyers, because there's a lot of expensive cars on this list.
Yeah, there are a lot.
A lot of expensive cars. I mean, go down the list of the cars that are $40,000 or more, and more than half, maybe 70% of these cars are $40,000 or more, $50,000 or more.
Okay, so ready to move on, Russell? Or you got anything else to say?
Me?
You can. I know you can just say stuff. Anyway.
Wow.
Ready for our comedic intermission here? Yeah.
Yeah.